Hello! Welcome to my first video in a series of videos I'm planning on doing where I'll showcase a couple of builds for Elden Ring, primarily made for New Game Plus or Shadow of the Erdtree. I'll be using some late game equipment from the base game, as well as some early equipment that you can get in Shadow of the Erdtree. So all the equipment I use from Shadow of the Erdtree are things you could pick up without having to defeat a single boss. Now, in this video, I won't actually be showcasing a build. You'll see a build that I'm using right now, which is just a kind of basic, generic lightning knight build, strength and faith focused, which is something I think a lot of people have already played around with. So it's not super exciting. It's just something to showcase some of the balancing aspects of New Game Plus. Because I think New Game Plus in Elden Ring, even though it might have a bit of a bad rap, is actually super fun. It just requires a little bit of personal balancing to make it more challenging and engaging. Because when you go into New Game Plus for the first time, you'll probably have a build that's pretty complete. Maybe you'll be in a level range between 100 and 200. So you'll be doing a lot of damage to the basic enemies, especially in the early game. And you won't take enough damage for enemies to be dangerous or feel challenging at all. So what I recommend is, first of all, using weapons that are lower level. It's a good opportunity to use some of the weapons you have picked up throughout the game that you haven't upgraded. Maybe some later game equipment from Remembrance bosses, or just weapon types that you haven't experienced or experimented with before. And then just gradually upgrading those weapons as you go along, going through New Game Plus. Another thing, which I will talk a bit more about in detail later in this video, is using talismans that decreases your damage negation, meaning using talismans that make you take more damage. And there are quite a lot of different talismans that you can use in the game that will provide different percentage-based debuffs to your damage negation. And you have to, my recommendation is using these talismans to balance the challenge and difficulty of the game. By doing this, I think it allows you to go through the entire game in New Game Plus without needing to level and therefore not worrying about losing your runes, which gives you the ability to just play through the entire game again and just enjoying the combat and the experience. So here you see me using a Banished Knight's Greatsword at level 4, I think it is, and a Clawmark Seal at level 6, which I think is a decent balance for the early game or the Limgrave area. And as you can see, even though I'm at 60 vigor and wearing semi-heavy armor, just getting above that 51 poise threshold, which I recommend, the enemies, if you see me getting hit here, oh, missed that shot, oh well. But I actually took quite a lot of damage just from basic hits. So I think most of the basic mobs here will take me down in somewhere between 4 to 5 hits, which I think is a decent balance for just the general soldiers around. And it takes me about, 4 R1s to kill one basic enemy. The specifics in terms of how much damage you want to take and how much damage you want to deal is sort of up to you and how you balance it. I'll show how I've set up my talismans after I defeated these enemies. But I can just say that I'm using a talisman called the Yedikers of Woe, which you have to pick up at Volcano Manor following Raya or Soraya's questline. And I'm also using something from the DLC, which is called Beloved Stardust, which maxes out your casting speed of incantations and spells, but it makes you take 15%, no, 30% more damage. So in total, I'm taking double damage as well as a 30% more damage taken. I think this gives you a pretty good balance for the early game. I like the Banished Knight's Greatsword and the Knight's Greatsword the most because of the moveset. They're a bit quicker and they look a bit more finessed, I think, compared to the normal Greatsword moveset, which has your character just kind of slamming your weapon down to the ground, which I don't think looks that great, but I really enjoy the moveset of the Banished Knight's Greatsword and the Knight's Greatsword. Here you can see the Godric's Knight is a bit more challenging to take down. He's quite tanky. And even though I haven't gotten hit by him yet, he does quite a lot of damage. So he'll kill me, yeah, in probably, there you saw, three hits. And this is personally the amount of challenge that I enjoy in Elden Ring, where enemies and bosses are dangerous enough to take you down in 3 to 4 hits, so you have some wiggle room for making mistakes, but you still have to be on your toes and stay on your guard to not die too quickly. So, here you can see my build. I'm at 150, and these days 2 of my mainstay talismans that I always want to use are the 2-headed turtle talisman, which makes your stamina regeneration a lot quicker, makes you able to perform more actions, and so that you don't end up not being able to do anything in the middle of a fight. And the second is the Blessed Dew talisman, which will steadily regenerate your FP. I think that's a very handy little tool, especially for exploring the overworld or legacy dungeons, but for boss battles you might want to switch that out. Now, I'm also using the Centrina's Blossom, which will increase your FP by a little bit. I think it's a really nice headpiece. It looks cute, and it gives you a little bit of extra FP without having to put any stats into mind. Now, I'm going to go through a couple of talismans that I think would be really handy to have for balancing your New Game Plus run without being underleveled or overleveled. The first, and I think most important, is the Daedaker's Woe. This one will double the amount of damage you take, and you can get it by completing Soraya or Ria's questline at Volcano Manor. The second is the Beloved Stardust. This will increase your damage taken by 30% and will increase your casting speed. So this is good if you're running a strength build and don't really have any points of dexterity and you still want to get some more damage taken but have some fun with incantations or spells. Another one that can be fun to play around with is the Fine Crucible Feather Talisman. This one is something you can find in the DLC, and it will make you take 50% more damage, but gives you a backstep, which is when you dodge without moving your control stick. Ifrit, which normally doesn't have. The backstep also has a unique attack, so if you backstep and then you R1, you get a unique attack. So it's fun to use if you want to play around more with backsteps and backstepping attacks. The Primal Glintstone Blade will reduce your spells and incantations by 25%, which is pretty handy, but will also reduce your maximum HP, which is another way of balancing the amount of damage you take by reducing your total HP. Another set of items you can use are the Scar Seals and the Sore Seals. There are 4 of these in total. You have Marika's Scar Seal, or Sore Seal, which will increase your mind, intelligence, and faith. And then you have the Radical Sore Seal, which will increase your strength, dexterity, endurance, and vigor. And these, the lower level ones will increase your damage taken by 10%, and the higher level ones, the Sore Seals, will increase your damage taken by 15%. So this is another item you can use to make sure that you take more damage by the enemies in the early game, but also give you some certain benefits which could be nice to have. Either I prefer the Marcus Scar Seal because it gives you higher mind, which I think is generally more beneficial. Normally you don't really need extra points in vigor or endurance when you're at like 150 because your build is most likely already finished. But if there are certain weapons you want to use in your build and you want to use specific requirements for stats, then the Radical Source Seal can be handy, but the same goes for Marika. It just depends on the weapons or equipment that you want to use. Another important item or handy item in the early game is the Balakin's Blessing, which you might remember from your first playthrough. I remember I had this, I get this from Fia by letting her hug you, and it actually reduces your maximum HP. Now, I didn't know this when I was playing my first time, so I would run around with this in my inventory, not realizing I was taking an HP reduction. But when you're going through your New Game Plus, this can actually be a good way to make sure that you have slightly lower HP, that you're taking more damage, and that enemies are more dangerous depending on where you are in the game. And then, if you're like me when you're doing New Game Plus, you want to jump around a bit in different areas. Say you want to go straight to Lydell, or you want to get to the DLC as quickly as possible. You can just pop the blessing and the debuff will go away, and you can go back to Fia and get another one when you're going back to earlier areas in the game. So that's pretty much it. This is my little short guide on how I like to balance New Game Plus to make sure that you actually have a challenging and engaging time. I've basically gone through an entire New Game Plus run now, both for Shadow of the Erdtree and for the base game. And I would say that just staying at around 150, I think, is actually a fairly balanced experience, both in DLC Plus and New Game Plus. And I've had a really fun time because so much of the encounters in the base game are actually really, really great. The legacy dungeons like Stormvale Castle and Lydell are amazing to re-experience, but I can imagine re-experiencing them like just running through and one-shotting everything would not be as fun, but re-experiencing them in a way that challenges you and makes you think about the encounters will give you, or I think will provide you with a much more enjoyable time for your first New Game Plus run. So I highly recommend, if you have just completed the DLC and are itching for another run of Elden Ring, go into New Game Plus. You'll have access to so many more tools, weapons, equipment, and talismans that you wouldn't have if you started a new game, and it would take you quite a long time to acquire all the items that I think are necessary to balance New Game Plus or necessary for your specific build. Now, I will be uploading a couple more videos in the next couple of weeks, where I will showcase a couple of builds that I think are unique, fun, and interesting, and are great to start playing around with more diversity in your playstyle when going through New Game Plus, or something you can use to have a slightly easier time going through the Shadow of the Erdtree experience, but still being challenged and not completely demolishing the game. At least the first build that I will showcase will be this. The two last ones will be more technical builds, which I think are also really fun and are quite different from each other. So stay tuned, and you'll hear more from me in not too long. All right, cheers!